today's episode, we'll be discussing OPEC and their recent announcement to cut down on oil production, several million barrels per day, which is a remarkable amount and something that was very unexpected and could potentially make the oil prices skyrocket. Not potentially, they already are. A quick history of OPEC. First off, OPEC stands for Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. Basically, a summary of everything going on is it's a special club of all the countries that export oil. Their main purpose is to coordinate and unify petroleum policies among member countries in order to secure fair and stable prices for petroleum producers, an efficient, economic, and regular supply of petroleum to consuming nations, and a fair return on capital to those investing in the industry. So basically, it's a bunch of big rich guys sitting around a table discussing, what they're going to do next with essentially one of the world's most valuable resources. So for more information, we're going to do an article right now.
This article is titled, Why Did OPEC Cut Oil Production? Key Reasons Explained. Written by Reuters. Editing by Kirsten Donovan. London, April 3rd. OPEC and its allies, including Russia, agreed on Sunday to widen crude oil production cuts to 3.66 million barrels per day or 3.7% of global demand. The surprise announcement helped push up prices by $5 per barrel to above $85 per barrel. Here are the main reasons why OPEC Plus is cutting output. Saudi Arabia has said voluntary output cuts of 1.66 million BPD on top of the existing 2 million BPD cuts were made as a precautionary measure aimed at supporting market stability. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said the Western banking crisis was one of the reasons behind the cut, as well as interference with market dynamics, a Russian expression to describe a Western price cap on Russian oil. Fears of a fresh banking crisis over the past month have led investors to sell out of risk assets such as commodities, with oil prices falling to near $70 per barrel from near an all-time high of $139 in March 2022. A global recession could lead to lower oil prices. Redburn Research said the size of the latest cut was probably overdone unless OPEC feared a major global recession. The cut will also punish oil short sellers or those who bet on oil price declines. Back in 2020, Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman warned traders against betting heavily in the oil market, saying he would try to make the market jumpy and promising that those who gamble on the oil price would be ouching like hell. Prior to the latest cut, hedge funds had reduced their net position in U.S. benchmark WTI oil to just 56 million barrels by March 21st, the lowest since February 2016. Their bullish long positions outnumbered bearish short ones by a ratio of just 1.39 to 1, the lowest since August 2016. The latest cut would hurt those who bet against oil really badly, said a source familiar with OPEC Plus thinking. Many analysts said OPEC Plus was keen to put a floor under oil prices at $80 per barrel, while UBS and Rystad predicted a jump back to $100. However, excessively high oil prices represent a risk for OPEC Plus as they speed up inflation, including for goods the group needs to purchase. They also encourage speedier production gains from non-OPEC members and investments in alternative sources of energy. Goldman Sachs said OPEC's power has increased in recent years as U.S. shale responses to higher prices have become slower and smaller, in part because of pressure on investors to stop funding fossil fuel projects. Washington has called the latest move by OPEC Plus inadvisable. The West has repeatedly criticized OPEC for manipulating prices and siding with Russia despite the war in Ukraine. The United States is considering passing legislation known as NOPEC, which would allow the seizure of OPEC's assets on U.S. territory in the event market collusion is proved. OPEC Plus has criticized the International Energy Agency, the West's energy watchdog in which the United States is the biggest financial donor, for releasing oil stocks last year, a move it said was necessary to bring down prices amid fears sanctions would disrupt Russian supply. The IEA's prediction never materialized, though, prompting OPEC Plus sources to say it was politically driven and designed to help boost U.S. President Joe Biden's ratings. The United States, which released most stocks, said it would buy back some oil in 2023 but later ruled it out. J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs said the U.S. decision not to buy back oil for reserves might have contributed to the move to cut output.
So some people might be wondering, well, what the hell is this going to do to, everything. Is gas prices going to go up? Yes. It's going to cost more to heat your home. It's estimated that roughly 10% of all oil used is used to warm homes or just heating in general. So it's going to become more expensive to heat your home. It's going to be more expensive to do anything that requires oil, which unfortunately, due to how we have set up our system, is basically everything. Basically everything needs oil. Down to plastic. Plastic needs oil to be made. Well, shouldn't we do something cheaper? That would be the next obvious, decision. Let's do something cheaper. So before we talk about what's cheaper, because there are a bunch of cheaper options, however, it's not that simple. Currently, 84% of the world's energy comes from fossil fuels. 33% of that is from oils, 27% is from coal, and 24% is from gas. That's a lot. That's a lot of shit going on right there. It's just so much fossil fuels. Those are high numbers. I'm going to be honest. When I first saw those numbers, I was really surprised on the size of them. I was expecting, low emission sources to be significantly higher, but it's only 16% of the world's energy, production. 7% being hydro, 5% being solar, wind, biofuels, tidal, and geothermal energy combined. 5%, only 5. That's ridiculous. And then 4% from nuclear. Now, I find that interesting. 4% from nuclear? I mean, yeah, right, you get nuclear is bad. It has this impossibly toxic trait to it where it just, makes everything radioactive, which is extremely bad for health, extremely bad for the environment, and extremely bad, right? You'd think. But if you crack down on the numbers a bit more, right? So we're looking at the numbers. Nuclear deaths caused from Chernobyl, long term, is estimated to be anywhere between roughly 2,000 to 60,000 deaths. 60,000 being the pessimistic one, and 4,000 being the number that the World Health Organization gave us. And the UN Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, it's a long-ass name, I'm going to be honest, says that it is actually probably less than 4,000. So we got a big range of numbers going on here. Here's how I feel about nuclear energy, right? It's a good short-term solution, right? So if we're going to cut down on coal production and oil usage as energy, we're going to need to supplement it with something. However, right now, whenever we get rid of a source, let's say we stop using oil, right? We're probably just going to replace that with something cheap, and that's already possible to, actually fill the shoes that are left behind by oil. So it's probably going to be coal. Which, again, coal is probably the worst for health. It is estimated that roughly, here, let me pull up my numbers here. Roughly, in the last 50 years, 100 million people have died due to air pollution, mostly coming from burning coal. That's a lot more than 60,000 from, Chernobyl. That's an insane amount. That's roughly 1/3 of the US population dead because of air pollution caused by burning fossil fuels. But you might be thinking, well, it could be worse, right? We could have nuclear radiation everywhere we go and nuclear waste buried under the ground because we have nowhere else to put it. And you're right. That is right. However, so we got to pick between two evils, basically. We have the one evil where it's killing us now, being coal and air pollution and whatnot. And then we have the other evil being nuclear waste that we have to put somewhere in the earth. Again, incredibly bad. However, with the nuclear waste, we have the hope, technically, that we'll be able to discover some form of technology that will allow us to either unradioactivate it, if that makes sense, which technically we do have very simple technologies that will allow us to do that to some degree to make it safer. And that would be really good for just the environment in general if we start using nuclear energy instead of coal or oil, because this will allow us to give us a little bit more breathing room when it comes to the environment and climate change in general. With this extra breathing room, we can use it to convert the entire world's energy supply into renewable resources, right? So we take nuclear and we use nuclear to basically replace the void that would be coming from, scrapping coal, oil, and gases as energy sources. We would use nuclear to replace that hole. Fill the shoes, if you will. I mean, no, you're right. It's not the greatest option. It's by far the greatest option. However, it's the significant lesser of two evils. Because even if you compare nuclear against, for example, renewables, hydro has been proven to be more fatal, with upwards of several 100,000 deaths. Now, this was mainly because of the Bangqiao flood deaths, which happened in China, I believe, where the dam basically broke. The dam broke, and it caused insane amount of floodings, and the estimated deaths is anywhere from 85,000 to 245,000. Which is significantly more than Chernobyl, right? Chernobyl had those 60,000 deaths, and that was the pessimistic guess. And now we're sitting here with 85,000 as the good number. And you're telling me nuclear is the less safe option? Hello? No? Again, if you'd like to check my sources, they're down below in the description of the podcast episode. So with these massive amounts of deaths caused by this dam being broken caused a lot of people to die, just like the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown caused a lot of people to die. However, if you actually look at the causes for both of these disasters, we'll call them disasters because that's what they were, you'll see that they were basically caused by the same thing, a combination between old technology and human error, which basically destroyed, well, in Chernobyl's case, there wasn't the proper safety precautions in place, and the government's response to it was more of everything's fine, don't look over here, when everything was not fine and they needed to respond a bit faster, and they didn't respond a bit faster, which was the cause for a lot of deaths. And then the same thing happened when the dam broke. The government was like, hey, don't look over here, everything's fine. Then a lot of people died. But in both cases, bad technology and bad safety precautions is fundamentally the cause for both of these disasters. So even if comparing nuclear against these renewable resource like hydro, and seeing that in an event of a hydroelectric dam bursting, it could cause a lot of deaths, just like, a nuclear meltdown could cause a lot of deaths, then you might be asking yourself, why? Just why? Why do we need to have something so dangerous as our only source? Why can't we just switch to a solar farm, which, would not result in hundreds of thousands of people dying if there was some sort of malfunction or human error? And you know what? You're right. That would be the optimal solution. However, when you take into consideration the fact that humans consume more energy during mornings and evenings, exactly 2 times a day when the sun is not shining the brightest, and thus solar panels will not be producing the most amount of electricity, means that we now have to find some way to store the electricity that these solar panels are producing when the energy is not being immediately used, right? So that's just another part of the infrastructure that we have to deal with. On top of seasonal changes with, just the amount of sun you get daily and all that other stuff. But that's not just for solar. That's a very similar problem with most other renewable resources. Wind has the same problem. It's not always going to be windy. And the wind is going to change seasonally as well. And geographically is going to change. So you can't have a wind farm everywhere, technically. And then, for example, tidal or like currents. The currents change seasonally again, and they're not always going to be as strong all year round or day to day. So we need to, basically the best way to solve this problem is to combine everything together, including nuclear, right? Why are we cutting ourselves off from nuclear? Because it has this chance to kill thousands of people. Yeah, obviously, that's a good reason to be hesitant about it. But the thing we're using right now is significantly worse. So how does that make sense? That's the shittiest argument I think I've ever heard. Let's not use this one thing because it's killing a bunch of people. Let's instead use this other thing that's killing even more people. It is estimated, right? So I said 100 million people in the last 50 years from air pollution. But it's estimated that there's actually 4 million per year because of our increased electricity usage in this modern day. That's insane. We've had roughly 2 large nuclear meltdowns, right? You had Chernobyl, and then you had the other one that I am blanking on the name of. But even with those 2, even if you have the most pessimistic possible death total for both of these disasters combined, it's going to be nowhere near the 4 million people dying each year from air pollution. Not even close. Again, it's a choice between 2 evils. You have one evil where you could have 120,000 people die in one disaster, but that's only if there's a disaster. You can actively prevent this disaster. You can take steps, you can take safety precautions, you can inform the public, you can create better evacuation routes, you can do everything in your power to actually reduce these casualty numbers. However, with fossil fuels like coal that require burning and thus, CO2 and air pollution, you literally cannot do anything to reduce that, other than stopping it or reducing the amount you burn. So, in my opinion, right, this is opinion, but I think we should probably switch to something that doesn't kill 4 million people a year. And this number, by the way, is coming from a World Health Organization article that was published in 2018. 2018. That's technically 5 years out of date. So that number is probably significantly higher since our energy consumption as a society has only been increasing as time has gone on. It has never decreased. It has only been increasing. And that is through a combination of larger population and more devices using electricity, including cars, which are like, so electric cars are bad for the environment. No, they're not. Well, yes and no, right? If they're being powered by, fossil fuels, yeah, they're pretty damn bad. Right now, the problem is it's hard to switch out of fossil fuels because there's so many things that require fossil fuels to function, mostly transportation stuff like planes, trains, and automobiles. But if we switch these planes, trains, and automobiles to electric, where they have batteries and motors instead of engines, then that switch to renewable resources or nuclear will be significantly easier, because now you just plug it into the energy grid and it's all good. Everything connects nicely. 4 million deaths per year. That's a lot. But let's play devil's advocate for a second here, right? 4 million deaths per year. I mean, obviously, there's going to be more deaths per year because, 27% of our energy comes from coal, or 33% comes from oil, or 24% comes from gas. It's 84% of the world's energy comes from fossil fuels, and thus air pollution. Naturally, there's going to be more deaths caused by that compared to the 16% that's from other things that are used significantly less. Obviously, there's going to be less deaths. You're right. So, that being said, OWID, published in 2020, did just that. They decided to calculate deaths per energy unit produced. And one energy unit is 1 terawatt hour. 1 terawatt hour is roughly the energy usage of about 12,600 US citizens annually. So, with this very convenient way to judge the amount of energy being used per, source of energy, we get annually about 25 deaths from coal, 18 from oil, and 3 from gas. Now you might be thinking, hey, that's not incredibly bad. Well, but then you come across and you compare it to renewable. Wind energy will cause roughly 2 deaths every few decades, and this is mostly due to construction and maintenance, where, unfortunate accidents will occur. Hydro will have 1 death every few decades. Again, same reason, unless, of course, there's a massive disaster like last time and 85,000 people die. And then solar, 1 death every few decades. Again, maintenance and whatnot. Nuclear, which you would think would be significantly worse, is actually 1 death every 14 years. So, now we're back to the decision. Do we take 25 deaths every year from coal? Or do we take 1 death every 14 years from nuclear? Do we take 18 deaths per year from oil? Or do we take 1 death every few decades from hydro? You're right. It's the fact we have to choose between people's lives is not optimal in any way at all. It's just not optimal. So, in theory, the best possible way to produce enough energy for our current society would be, and this is far off into the future, not going to happen anytime soon, is probably a Dyson sphere. Now, you might be wondering, what the hell is a Dyson sphere? Now, let me tell you. A Dyson sphere is basically a sphere that will be constructed around the sun to harness as much energy as possible that the sun is giving off. Do you know how much energy the sun is giving off? Answer: a lot. It's giving off a lot of energy. Every second, it gives off enough energy to power our society for a decade. That's a lot of freaking energy. And if we manage to harness it as a society, we will literally have basically infinite energy for as long as the sun is alive. Now, so we can add this new choice. No, not really, because this is genuinely very, very far off into the future. In order to even vaguely have a chance of constructing such a thing, we would need to basically deconstruct Mercury as a planet just for the resources to be able to construct enough material to do what we want. And that will take a very long time. The fact that we're struggling just to get to Mars, we're not going to very easily get to Mercury and set up a base to basically a factory operation to construct the necessary materials and devices for a Dyson sphere to capture the energy coming from the sun. We're not going to have that anytime soon. But that is the goal. That is the ultimate goal that we as a society should aim for. In conclusion, right, we should stop creating more problems for ourselves by fighting amongst each other about how to solve problems. Right now, the problem right now, what we are facing is that we are fighting amongst each other about how to solve problems. What we fail to realize is that everyone, for the most part, everyone wants what is best for the planet as a whole. Because if the planet goes down, so do we. You know, there are definitely a handful of people that seem like they do not care. They just want money. And that does seem to be the case. However, U.S. governments don't have that goddamn excuse. Individuals, sure, individuals could have the excuse where they're, manipulated by greed and money. But governments should not. Governments, the whole point of a government is to make sure that the population they govern is safe and secure in their future. Side tangent over. Anyways. OPEC is cutting down on oil production daily. Good. Keep doing that, OPEC. You're doing a good job. Although I am confused by their decision, just a little bit. Not really, actually. By cutting down the supply, they're increasing price, making more money. Ah, crap. Ah, well, if we aim for the picture-perfect society of the future with a Dyson sphere around the sun, we will be able to travel the universe without fear of running out of energy. With that being said, that's the conclusion of today's episode. I hope you enjoy. Please follow us on all of our social medias. That includes YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And please, if you enjoyed the episode, please follow and give us a review. It helps. It helps a lot. See ya.
Why are you still here? Get the fuck out.